Everything Old is New Again is sponsored by the Law Office of Douglas Viviani. Douglas Viviani has been providing quality legal service for over 26 years. We're a general practice firm and can handle any legal matter you may have for a reasonable fee. If you're involved in a car accident, starting a business, planning your estate, or need a criminal attorney, please call 631-681-1910 or email us at vivianilaw@aol.com for a free consultation. Get the justice you deserve. Contact the Law Office of Douglas Viviani at vivianilaw@aol.com.
Mexican Air Force pilots capturing on videotape what are said to be 11, count them, 11 UFOs, unidentified flying objects. They are officially that. Bright objects, some sharp points of light moving quickly across the sky. The tape called historic by some. Members of the Mexican Defense Department saying it's the first time UFOs have had the backing of any country's armed forces.
So that is Shepard Smith from the Fox News television station. We are Everything Old is New Again. We're discussing and continuing to discuss the UFO phenomenon. And is it real? Should it be taken seriously? I'm here with David Cohen, as usual, and we have our special guest returning, Dr. John Viviani, who is a self-proclaimed ufologist, if you will, and has been examining this subject for 30 years. He's, as an aside, a dentist in Huntington, so if you'd like
self-proclaimed?
Yeah. If you'd like to have some interesting discussion while having your teeth drilled, feel free to visit him on any Saturday afternoon. This is Everything Old is New Again. Let's talk about that clip. That was the Mexican Air Force who had followed UFOs, apparently, correct?
No, they were actually out looking for drug runners. And what happened was on their infrared feed, they saw the lights. It wasn't visible to the crew with the naked eye, and then the objects were flying side by side to the Mexican Air Force.
But on that clip, obviously that was on television, you could see through what they were seeing. There's a clear videotape of what they saw, and you could see, and you could probably pull it up on YouTube, it's all I did, the lights and stationary lights of what appeared to be some kind of craft that does not look like an airplane or a helicopter. So it's an interesting topic, an interesting subject. And the first time, finally now, that was somewhere around 10 years ago, that this topic again now is kind of going mainstream.
So what happened? So what happened with that? It just died, or...
That's the killer. It gets presented. You can even hear Shepard Smith, the way he's presenting it is sort of tongue-in-cheek. He says, oh, this is kind of interesting, whatever. Is anyone going to become serious with this topic, or should it be serious? Should someone in the mainstream take it seriously? If you want to hear this kind of information, you're going to hear it on, there's another radio show that's broadcast late at night, and they take these topics all the time. I guess I can mention the name, Coast to Coast. And you can hear that and hear them talk about this. And again, they kind of get ridiculed. Why? Any answers?
I don't know. There must be some. Well, there must be some pressure from the government, or people just don't want to. They don't want to speak out to be ridiculed. I mean, this thing's 10 years ago. It's on tape from a government sanction saying this is not a hoax. We have this here. What more do you need to say? Listen, let's investigate this further.
Well, I think we need a government person from the government to actually start getting on board. And I think we may have that with this clip.
The fact that unless the Defense Department proves us otherwise, that it was probably some form of an alien spacecraft.
Now, that's Governor Fife Symington of Arizona. He was governor in 1997. So that, other than Jesse Ventura, I think, can say that that's a governor that has some...
What was he speaking about?
Yeah, he was speaking about what's called the Phoenix Lights. So let's have the doctor explain to us what were the Phoenix Lights.
Well, first of all, the importance of the Phoenix Lights there wasn't just one witness. There was thousands of witnesses. There was this V-shaped formation.
And when was this?
This is back in 1997, I believe.
So pretty recent.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it started actually. It was in Nevada, Henderson, Nevada. There was these reports coming, and then 30 minutes later, it was in Phoenix. So it traveled very far, fast, and was huge. This huge light formation. They said that a 747 could land on land on this thing. That's how big it was.
It was stationary lights. They were not moving in
the
in
lights
shape of a V.
themselves were stationary,
Right.
but the craft did hover for 4 to 5 minutes in Phoenix, and you can go on YouTube and see it. It's sitting right there. We don't have anything that could stay and hover that's big. And then it also did travel very quickly to other areas. It was caught on a tower, a local airport tower. Air traffic controllers saw this thing. It was not on radar. There was a lot of reports from all kinds of witnesses from all different walks of life. You have pilots, doctors.
Well, I mean, if you've got the governor acknowledging that this existed, it's got some significance to it. Let's just take a look. We're running a little bit low on time here. I have another a clip from a Dr. Roger Lear, who is a surgeon, and let's talk and listen to what he's talking about in terms of this subject.
Dr. Lear supervised the procedure to remove the foreign object from Tim Cullen's arm. Although there was no original entry scar, a tiny metallic object was found under the skin.
Once the object was removed, we find two very surprising things. One is that there's absolutely no inflammatory response by the body to the object, which is quote-unquote impossible. And number two, we find that there's a large number of nerve cells there that really don't belong. We fortunately had a piece of equipment which was a radio frequency detector, and we actually detected two oscillating frequencies that were being emitted from the object. When they are removed, they don't do anything. We find that these objects contain metals which are not from this earth.
So, I mean, that's explain that. And he explained it kind of, but go into a little more details. What is he talking about?
Basically, he was taking pieces of metal out of people's arms and legs that they never had any accidents. They don't know how it got in there. They said, "What's this thing?" He takes it out, sends it to be analyzed to Los Alamos lab. They tried to get it analyzed, and the analysis came back and said, "Well, the elements here are not found on Earth," and they didn't know it came from. Taken from a person's body. They just sent it and said, "Listen, what is this?"
And by the way, when I researched it, at least 8 people.
It was. I believe it was 8 people and 17 objects and 8 people.
And no scars or no, when you insert something into your body, of course, there's a scar in some way.
There was no
piece of metal,
right?
So there was no scarring whatsoever. Now, what about this nerve business? What's going and the rejection of why is the fact that this piece of metal was not rejected significant?
Well, because it seemed to be incorporating itself into the body instead of being rejected. It actually was, the nerves were growing into this thing. And I saw one report when they actually saw it. You could see the surgery on TV, on the YouTube. When he was trying to get the object, it actually kind of moved away from his forceps. It was not just stable.
And they also measured it, and they saw that while it was in the body, it gave off some signal, some frequency. But when they took it out of the body, it stopped working. Yeah. Let's take a listen to someone in the entertainment field that has a little bit of knowledge, or at least experience in this area, Steven Spielberg, and see what he has to say about it.
Well, I wouldn't put it past this government that a cosmic Watergate has been underway for the last, 25 years. And at the same time, I don't think it's... I think as we're growing up, or from the government's point of view, I think we've been adults for hundreds of years, but from the government's point of view, we're still growing up, and eventually they might want to tell us something about what they've discovered over the decades.
So I think, of course, he did Close Encounters, and he's did quite a bit of research for that film, and he's got some interest, in the topic as well.
So 2 questions,
yes.
Okay? If there is a cover-up, all right, this would be incredibly difficult to cover up, right? This isn't just, we found some Afghan terrorist hiding and we can't disclose it for national security reasons. This is the greatest story in the history of the world, that we were contacted or we found some evidence of other life forms. And so many people would have to be involved in this cover-up. How can you keep it to yourself? Well, how could all of these people keep it to themselves?
Is it a cover-up, though? We've been talking about, Shepard Smith went on the air with this Mexican story. It got no traction.
Well, little things like that might leak out, and that's an outlier. You can say he was a nut. You could say something, or like to your point, no media person wants to cover it for fear of what's going to happen to their professional career.
Or it could be something that was experienced in our civilization in 1938. Orson Welles did a play called The War of the Worlds.
Oh, so the fear of panic.
The fear of panic. Let's just listen to a little of that, see what that happened.
What's up?
shed the flame springing from the mirror and it leaps right at the advancing men. It strikes them head on. Logs are turning into flames. The whole field's caught up by the woods, the barns, the gas tanks of the automobiles spreading everywhere. It's coming this way now, about 20 yards to my right.
And of course, that goes silent for quite a while. I'm not going to leave silence on the air here, but and then they cut back into a radio broadcast of music. So back in 1938, that
a lot of people panicked. They heard that on the radio, and they started leaving town, and they thought we were actually being invaded.
Right. He presented that as if it was, a real occurrence. So that could be some of the reason they don't want panic to occur in the civilization.
John, are people really going to panic, though?
I don't know if they're going to panic, but there's another theory also that
10 seconds.
That we... Well, anyway, I can't get into it.
All right, we'll cover this another time. Long story short, I think Close Encounters gives us a good feel for the topic.
Do you want to give Doug a noogie right now for that? Little brother, big brother?
Shot of Novocaine.
This portion of Everything Old is New Again is sponsored by ResumeDrInc.com. When you're seeking to change your career, apply for a promotion, or are trying to find a job, your resume is the first thing that's seen that represents you to a potential employer. Make sure your resume makes a clear, concise, and professional impression of who you are so you can get that job interview. Send your current resume to ResumeDrInc@AOL.com for a free online review. You'll receive a timely reply with a reasonable quote to properly prepare your resume. Let them make sure you have a resume that will get you noticed. Send your resume or questions to ResumeDrInc@AOL.com. That's ResumeDrInc@AOL.com.
Okay, we are back. I had to cut off the good doctor as we had left because I wanted to get the commercials in. But before we continue with that,
and he had to give you a wedgie, for doing that,
I had to make an excuse up. It sounded like the commercials was better than the wedgie issue, but okay. Truth be told, long story short, I do want to get into why Close Encounters was played there and has a little significance to me. Spielberg took the subject seriously in that if we were to communicate with aliens that came to us, how would we do it? And through using mathematics and music, the way they did in that movie was genius to me, I guess, because I'm not so knowledgeable in either subject. But that was a way
It was pretty cool. It was an interesting idea, I think.
And Hollywood has had some ideas. We spoke about this briefly before. Hollywood, to me, the movies sometimes are a reflection of how the general public is thinking. They're not going to make a movie about UFOs or alien contact if no one is interested in the subject. We've seen back in 1951, The Day the Earth Stood Still, as we spoke about, and that was the Close Encounters of the day. That took the general public's imagination by storm and opened the floodgates to that kind of movie. We've seen Independence Day, where they've talked about, with the president in that movie, about Area 51, and are you kidding me, isn't it real, and so forth. So it's these theories we're talking about are now out there in the general public, and does that then lead to a movie like E.T., where now we've accepted the fact, a majority of Americans accept the fact that aliens are out there, whether they're visiting or not. Majority of Americans feel that we're not alone in the universe. So that being the case, now we have E.T. visit us, and he's very cute, and he's benevolent, and he's phoning home, and we're helping him get back to his civilization. So are we then having, or is Hollywood then in some way part of this, where they're allowing these movies to be made or promoting these movies to be made to then get the general public more used to this idea that we may be visited in the future, if not having been visited in the past? Dead silence.
I don't know.
All right. Well, I'll leave it there. I think I'm going to bow out of the conversation at this point and let the doctor take over in terms, because I thought that was, to me, I think that's what's happening.
But that was 30 years ago. I'm trying to think after E.T., I mean, to kind of flash forward here, what
well, you got Independence Day, and they're talking about it then.
But it was complete destruction, right? They're not presenting.
We won the war. In other words,
the humans won.
The humans won, and that's all I
show.
Right. They had Signs. Mel Gibson did the movie Signs.
That's true about the crop crop.
And nothing's a coincidence. And even it's like here's the idea. Now all of a sudden those movies are showing the ET, if you will, as being not so benevolent, but we're achieving against all the odds and the technology that they have, we are still winning that battle. So the general public, even if there are aliens that are not benevolent, the general public is still okay with it, if you will. Or not.
Right, so bringing it back from the movies to reality, just for a minute.
That is our reality.
Have you listened to the show? All right, good. No, but we did leave off. That's a good point what Dave is making, because we did leave off about talking about the panic, and the doctor had something to say about that.
Oh, so panic, right? What would people really panic?
Well, yeah, I was going to say another reason why they may cover it up other than panic was perhaps if they have this technology, let's say this energy, they harness this energy and we're able to get off of our current energy, and it would tilt us upside down as far as the economic balance, as if everything was all of a sudden free energy. Think about what the government would think about that and how that turns our society around. It'd be great for us, but then our economy is like all messed up. It's all different. So maybe they are hiding some of the technology. They don't want to say, listen, we have this, we have that. Maybe that's another reason of a cover.
Right.
Well, there's one other story just to talk about. We don't have clips about it because there's just no sound bites on this because it's so complicated. But there was an investigation by the British government, and I think they're calling it Bright Waters. So, Doctor, what was that whole discussion?
Was an Air Force base in England somewhere that they saw lights in the forest. So they went out to investigate, and you can actually hear the actual military tape. They were looking for, they thought it was something crashed there, and they went out and they saw lights, and they actually saw an object that looked like a big eye, as if something was looking at them. And one of the Air Force guys actually touched this object, and the next day he had this uncontrollable urge to write this binary code down. And this is 30 years ago. We don't pre-computers really for the general public. They don't know about binary code. He wrote 16 pages of binary code and also wrote these symbols of what he saw on this thing that he touched. And there's been investigation into what the heck, what does it mean, the code, trying to figure it out. And there are some theories as far as what it does mean. There's some coordinates that came about and some theories about that. It's actually these guys were time travelers because they had the year 8100, I think it was, that came across. But it was a military installation that sent these military guys out, and they didn't even speak about it for come public for years. So they had no personal gain to make this type of story up.
But they had a use of binary code back 30 years ago before the computer's binary code was even popular. So how did this guy come up with this message that actually could be translated into a message, whatever the message was?
And he just, after he wrote it down, he put it away and forgot about it. After he got it out of his system, he said, all right, that's it. And some investigator was looking into it and said, what do you mean? You wrote this down? And then they're trying to figure out, 30 years later, what happened. But
after all this discussion, we're trying to just expose the topic and get the person with the open mind, which I know Dave has, to just at least consider, well, is this something that's worthwhile talking about, worthwhile investigating on the computer or wherever else, maybe even going to one of these conventions with me? Now
you're talking crazy. Alien life is one thing.
If they had the convention in Vegas, that'd be something. But in Arizona, I don't know. But where do you stand on it at this point?
When as you guys are talking, I'm thinking, it's really almost like a perfect storm here, because if there is some evidence of superior intelligence, that yes, I think to John's point, it could create havoc, maybe not panic like in War of the Worlds, but it could disrupt the economy. There could be technology that's incredibly dangerous that the government doesn't want to tell us about. And so really what's happening is somehow maybe they're keeping it back, and the people who do report these little incidences occasionally could be ridiculed, or they don't report it because they're worried about their careers. So, look, I've kind of come over on the other side. I think if the confluence of evidence, what you're telling me here, would get me more interested, I'd like to find out more about it. because it's starting to make sense to me why, if it does exist, why it could not be, or it's not being widespread in terms of letting people know, because there are some logical reasons why. So,
and there is a little bit of a breakthrough, if you will, look at the presidents themselves. There is a story of Nixon bringing Jackie Gleason to a certain area and showing him bodies of aliens. I don't know if that's going to be legit or not, but that's out there. But more to the point is Jimmy Carter has admitted seeing something he called a UFO or unexplained. President Reagan, in a very famous speech, discussed, and he said, well, if UFOs came around, just hinting about that. I mean, the President of the United States talking about it, if they came around, they would think that our problems are minuscule and we should be getting along together because there's a much larger threat than just what's going on this planet.
I mean, there's an article that, I don't know if you guys saw, that just came out in National Geographic. Yes, I actually read National Geographic. I do.
Well, just for the pictures? Or?
Yeah, not just for the pictures, just like Playboy. There's this whole article about how they're looking for other forms of life. We're spending millions of dollars, but just looking for carbon, just some water on a distant in a distant galaxy somewhere, the moon of Jupiter or something. All they want to know is that there's water or something carbon-based. And to make that leap to, well, not only is there something carbon-based, but, they've got two eyes and they're talking to us and they visited, right?
Well, I don't even know that they would be carbon-based. See, I go as far as, if you...
But maybe not.
The stats of the universe are so beyond belief in terms of what's possible out there, the numbers.
And that article actually does address it, that there could be life forms that we're just not sure exist, because we don't know anything about any other types of existence other than what can be chemically or what makes us up as people.
We think it all has to be, what we have here has to be the same thing out there.
Right.
It's
not necessarily. Well, this is an interesting discussion. I hope you enjoyed it. Please email us at oldnewagain@aol.com. This is Everything Old is New Again. We will be back next week discussing horse racing. Is it dead or alive? Come on back to Everything Old is New Again.
So about that molar, I had this...